And we're live. Nick says he'll be on in a minute. See that bloody Nick, he drives me nuts. So tonight, guys, happy St Andrew's Day to my fellow Scots. I really should have waited for somebody to come on before saying that, so I'll say it again when somebody comes on. 2 minutes and I'm sharing it. Hey Sarah Louise, we've got two, so we'll start the show again. So tonight, guys, we are doing Hurricane Mitch Part 2, but we're waiting for the young Nicholas he's holding up the brigade. Let's all boo him. Put boo in the chat team. So happy St Andrew's Day to my fellow Scots. Thank you very much, Sarah Louise. I actually forgot it was St Andrew's Day. It was actually a friend of mine that put the post up in a club, in a group that I'm just about to give a shout out to. Hiya Bill, hiya Eric. So there's a group, guys, you really need to go and check out. I'll put the link in the description. It's a group called the Paradox Club, that's run by Steve and Sharon. It's a really good group. They do different things every night about 7:45. There's things like card readings. Steve does his own EVP sort of session in his house. So they're really good and so friendly, because every time that I'm on, they'll always say, "Hi, Lois." Even everybody that joins them, they're like, "Hi, such and such, welcome to Paradox Club." Honestly, they're really good guys. Oh, hello, Parker, you wee fanny. That poor boy. I should be sharing, but I'm sitting here just totally talking shit to the lugs. So that's my first shout out. My second shout out, hey my love, my second advertisement for the day is on Saturday, Simply Spooky is presenting an event at the Village Church in Skegness. They will be joined by the Dark Mirror Boys. I don't know who they are, but I think they're shit anyway. So what I'll do as well, guys, is I'll put the link in the chat for that as well. Or you can get tickets via messaging myself, messaging Viv, messaging, Wayne, Mark, whoever. If you're wanting tickets, don't miss it, guys. I think it'll be really good. A really good event, and I'm gutted myself that I'm not going. But it's a bit short notice. Get that elf away. I don't want to see that gob shite. So the Dark Mirror, you're right, the Dark Mirror Boys are nutters. So again, what I'll do at the end of the show, guys, is I'll retell everybody. So that gives a chance to, obviously, people coming in. But definitely get your tickets for Saturday. Don't be late. Really get them. So I'm going to shut up now because Nick's here and he bullies me. So I'm just going to let him take the show as per usual. He steals the show every time, that boy. I'm only kidding you on.
Well, first off, sorry I'm a few minutes late. My dad's on the roof right now, so I had to help him out with the ladder. So he's cleaning out the leaf gutters right now. So actually had to make sure.
If I knew that, I would have told you to come on after your dad's done after the roof.
It was happening all so quick. I didn't even have really a chance to even describe. So he's on the roof right now, but he should be fine. I even checked saying, okay, I got to get on the show. You're going to be all right by yourself? And he said he was going to. So he should be okay.
Nicholas says it's a brilliant show on a Monday night. I suppose it's passable. I did watch it actually on Monday night because a certain someone made me feel bad and said that I just come in and go. That's it. I wonder who that person would have been. You very naughty boy. So I had to ditch Stargate for Wayne.
Oh no. I must admit though, saying that, I've just recently got into watching Stargate Universe.
Oh, nice.
It's not as good, but I would do.
The problem is when you watch the films, you get one opinion of them, and then when you start watching the series, it's. Did you see that?
Yeah. Totally.
Hi, Ellen. Love you, Ellen.
Love you too. You watch the films and you think, oh yeah, that's pretty good, and then all of a sudden they bring out the series, and you're like, yeah, that's okay. And just like the Police Academy films, the more there was, the sort of more tedious they got. And I found it very hard to get into them, so I stopped watching them. But then I saw a clip of one of the Stargate Universe episodes on TikTok, and I thought, do you know what? I might watch this. So I did, started watching them.
Guess what they're making a TV series. Oh, sorry, Nick, I'm taking up your fucking time.
Fine,
I know.
You're fine.
I'm sorry.
You're good. Well, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. Know what they're making a series, Fallout. See the game Fallout? They're doing a TV series. I can't wait to actually watch it.
So Fallout is another version, in a way, of Walking Dead, but set in a nuclear holocaust.
Really?
True. Hey, William. But definitely. Right, so now I'll shut
up. Before I get started, because like I said, I'm going to have more videos presented. I definitely want to do a quick test just to make sure that you guys could hear it. But yeah, we're going to continue where we left off, obviously with part 2 about Hurricane Mitch. The first slide that I got it's yet another Weather Channel video. This was when, because if you guys remember from last time that we were talking about, we were kind of looking at the early stages of Hurricane Mitch, when it was still like a low pressure system. Then it became a tropical depression, the tropical storm, and we went up to when it became a Category 1 hurricane. Now this is where things are going to start getting a lot more intense with the hurricane growing power, and you can even see on the weather maps how big and strong it's getting. So I wanted to ask, Wayne, didn't you say that you saw part 1, or I don't remember if you did?
I was trying to catch up by watching part 1. I never got the chance to. My bad.
It's no big deal. I mean, it's still kind of, we were kind of more or less talking about the early stages of when Hurricane Mitch developed. Now we're going to really start seeing it really intense in power from the weather clips, but also we will be getting into some other videos and clips too. So, oh wait, here Terry just said Hurricane Mitch. I was in court in Key Largo that day. Really? Is that, I don't know exactly where Key Largo's located.
I wonder how they're going to do the super mutants. I'm wondering that as well.
Oh, it's in Florida. That's in Florida.
Eric.
Yeah. I like your hair color. That's awesome. Okay, so Key Largo is in Florida, so that means he must have experienced the remains of when Mitch eventually hit Florida. So, but we'll definitely try to get into it as much as possible. So, you guys ready for it then?
Sorry, I'm just a bit distracted now with something, but no. Hi, let's rock on, Nicky boy. You've got the controls.
Okay. All right, let me do I would like to do a quick test run just to make sure that you guys can hear the sound, because we had an issue last time. So let me know if you guys can hear this. And also, well, first off, let me know if you guys can see the slide. So here we go. All right, so, oh, here it is. So I was trying to figure out where the hell is it. All right, can you guys see it now?
I suppose so.
It's a blurry lighthouse.
Well, it is the picture quality is a little bit is a little bit, not what. Yeah, it's kind of a little pixelated, but it's H2, so I apologize for it.
Oh,
but
so
let me know if you guys
put glasses on.
Yeah, but let me know if you guys could hear it though. So I'm gonna play it. You guys hear it? Any luck?
Yeah, it's a bit gravelly.
Yeah, I know.
I can hear it.
Okay, good. That's all. So now we're going to get to where Mitch is actually really going to be intensifying. So here we go.
Time for a look at the tropics, and don't forget we'll also be checking out what's going on back at home. We do have a lot of rain and a lot of snow actually in the forecast for the mountains of the west. But we want to talk first off about Hurricane Mitch. This is a dangerous hurricane, has increased in strength a lot in the last 20.
Yep, here's when it's a category 2.
All day long yesterday, it was stationary. It was a tropical storm. Upper level winds were keeping it from developing, but a prime environment to gain even more strength, potentially becoming as strong as a category 4 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. It's a category 2 right now with 105-mile-per-hour winds. The 5 o'clock update from the Hurricane Center places the center at 15.3 north, 78.2 west. That's now just 200 miles south-southwest of Kingston and Jamaica. The movement has been slowed just a little bit. It was moving at 7 miles per hour. Now reported movement 6 miles per hour. The pressure has been dropping through the last 24 hours. Now it's 976 millibars. Hurricane watches are in effect now in Cuba. Hurricane warnings for Jamaica. Now the official forecast takes it to the north for a while longer, and then tomorrow it should start turning more to the northwest. And the does have it missing Jamaica, but not far enough to allow us to go without hurricane warnings here. So there are hurricane warnings, and that means that hurricane conditions can be expected within the next 24 hours. If you have a hurricane watch, it means they are possible. So again, Cuba may not see the effects of Hurricane Mitch, but at this point, it's just too close to take the gamble. So
now you can really see the hurricane on the map.
There you can see the center of circulation, the eye. It's had a well-defined eye now, last few hours. And again, moving just very slowly to the north. The official forecast track takes it to the northwest, then missing Jamaica, again, gaining strength through today and tomorrow. And then eventually it turns it to the west, so far enough to the west that places like maybe Cancun and Cozumel would be most endangered. However, one of the forecast models wants to try to take it more to the north, and that's why Cuba has the watches, and that's why folks in Florida should watch this one very carefully as well. Again, official forecast does not take it up toward Florida, but it's still a possibility. This is a strong hurricane.
Wow, look at that.
Continuing to gain strength, so we're going to watch it very closely. This is the infrared satellite picture. You can see the deep red, that's the high cloud tops. That indicates, again, strengthening the more of this that you do see. And you'll notice that the eye gets very well defined here in the last few hours. It's very symmetrical, just in, again, a perfect environment for more strengthening.
A powerful hurricane. It is quite likely going to be a major hurricane. That's at least a category 3 on the Saffir-Simpson.
Oh, yeah, now it's a category 3. It's in, well, not yet, but it will be.
Mitch center 200 miles south-southwest of Kingston, Jamaica. Top sustained winds now 105 miles. Quite likely going to be upped again later tonight, and I'll show you why. It's moving north at 6. Very little change in the motion today. Almost straight off to the north, just maybe a little bit shy of that. This is the change. Pressure down to 976 millibars. And that is telling us as the pressure drops, it's measuring the intensity of the hurricane, basically. The lower the pressure, typically the stronger the hurricane. And it has dropped significantly today. So that is why we are very concerned about what's going on here. Hurricane watches and warnings as of the latest. Jamaica under a hurricane warning. Eastern half of Cuba under a hurricane watch from Camagüey all the way down to Guantanamo. It is possible that the next advisory we may see watches extended for central or even western Cuba, and it's very possible that up toward the Caymans may be under a hurricane watch, and I'll show you why. Here it is, our picture, the big picture here showing Cuba off to the north, southern Cuba, a few rain squalls up in that vicinity. Jamaica, tough to see, but if you make it out right in through here, some rain squalls around. The brunt of a hurricane is with the CDO, or central dense overcast. That is this little circular area right here. Outer bands, not so much energy, but in that eye wall area surrounding the eye, that's where the strongest, that is what we're looking at develop today. All of this dark red here is indicating that we have very cold cloud tops. Generally speaking, the colder the cloud tops, that's when you have the strongest winds and the heaviest rain associated with that. So that's what is concerning us. Earlier today, late this morning, the eye developed very quickly, and today this hurricane is becoming much better organized. Conditions aloft are favorable for continued development. Over to Honduras right here, Belize right here, and this is Yucatan. The official forecast out of the Hurricane Center continues to track this off a little bit to the north, but we all believe, looking at the forecast, that this is going to start curving off to the northwest, and simply being the fact that there is a ridge of high pressure aloft blowing out across the north or the southern Gulf of Mexico. Clockwise flow would mean winds from the northeast to the southwest. So all interest over toward Honduras, the Bay Islands here, of course the Caymans, back over to Belize and the Yucatan Peninsula need to watch this hurricane. Closer view of the hurricane. This is what we're looking at here. And look at the eye. Maybe a slight wobble over the past little while here as opposed to exactly north, maybe a little bit of a wobble off to the northwest. But a lot of times hurricanes tend to do that. So that's what we're watching for. Back out for the rest of the tropics. This is the way it's looking. Again, the hurricane right here. The rest of the tropics are overall pretty quiet. Their top sustained winds 50 miles per hour.
I forgot to cut out some of the footage.
More of a
I'm going
curve
to skip ahead
and
just a little
be
bit.
the biggest effect.
Like to check on.
Yeah, here we go.
10 minutes before the top of the hour. This is the time, as always, that we like to check on storm watch and also the tropical update. In a moment, I'll talk about a storm in the western part of the nation and what it might mean for your travels out west, and that's coming up in a moment. First, a look at the tropics, and if you've been watching throughout the evening, you know that we have now a Category 3 hurricane there in the Caribbean. Let's go ahead and show you first the broad view of this, and that would certainly pinpoint Hurricane Mitch is located. You can even see the eye clearly visible at this point in time, even on this broad satellite picture. Let's zoom in a little bit closer. Hurricane Mitch, as of the 11 o'clock advisory, centered at 15.7 north, 78.4 west, 190 miles south-southwest of Kingston, Jamaica. Sustained winds of 120 miles per hour, a dramatic increase just throughout this evening alone. It is moving to the north-northwest at 5 miles per hour. The estimated central pressure is now down to 965 millibars. I talked about it being a Category 3 on the Saffir-Simpson scale.
You're going to see this on a number of occasions, and for those that don't know, this is the actual Saffir-Simpson scale, obviously, that rates hurricanes from 1 to 5. So in case you guys don't know it, you guys get the idea of what damage each number creates.
That means that it is a major hurricane, and it is capable, if it were to make landfall, of causing extensive damage. Now, with that, I also want to remind you there is a very good possibility this could become a Category 4, capable of producing extreme damage should it make landfall. Let's talk more about where the watches and warnings are in effect at this time. Hurricane warnings in effect for the island of Jamaica, hurricane watches for eastern Cuba. That is how it has been established thus far. We are also very concerned about folks here into western Cuba and the Cayman Islands. Now, this is expected to eventually take more of a northwesterly turn sometime in the day on Sunday when it makes that turn will make here, obviously. Regardless of how close it comes, or regardless of whether or not it makes landfall anywhere around Jamaica or the Caymans, it's going to bring up some very, very heavy surf here, very high surf. We could see waves perhaps even up and over 20 feet. That's a possibility for some of these areas. So it's already generating a tremendous amount of surf. And again, regardless of whether or not it has a direct impact on these islands, we already know it's going to bring some very, very high surf. And that is enough to be wary of right there. Hurricane watch, just a reminder, means that conditions are possible, hurricane conditions within that watch area within the next 36 hours. A hurricane warning means that those conditions are expected in the warning area in 24 hours or less. So you need to be thinking in the mode of preparedness if you're watching from Jamaica or even around the Cayman Islands, because this is, again, going to perhaps be impacting you as we head late into Sunday and on into Monday. So if you're watching from these islands here, some of you are already seeing some of the thunderstorms banding. You need to be thinking about getting that disaster preparedness
Like
kit ready,
perfect
thinking
circle.
about if you were to evacuate, where would you go? Just kind of get in that mindset and monitor the situation very closely. This has kind of increased in aerial coverage, which is also a sign of some strengthening. The center of circulation, very obvious here with the eye that has been pretty evident throughout the evening, and a good outflow in all the quadrants. So it has all these things going for it that it is likely to continue to strengthen. And as high pressure builds in the upper levels of the atmosphere across the Gulf of Mexico, we'll continue to see a favorable environment for this. So again, if you're watching even from Cuba, that far north, you need to monitor this. If you're watching from Florida, and we don't want to alarm you by any means, we know down the road. If you're in Jamaica or around the Caymans, you need to start thinking about taking action just to be prepared. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. I'm Christina Abernathy, and it's time now for our tropical update. We have a hurricane to tell you about. Let's take a look. Our tropical update. Here we go. The big picture out there. Watching Hurricane Mitch in the Caribbean. You can see it on the satellite view here, and it is quite powerful, and we're continuing to watch it very closely. Look at the latest coordinates.
Look at that.
Centered at 15.9 north, 78.9 west. That puts the center about 195 miles southwest of Kingston, Jamaica. The wind's 125 miles per hour. It's moving to the northwest now at 5 miles per hour, and the pressure 953 millibars. So a very powerful hurricane, and we do have hurricane watches and warnings in effect. The hurricane warnings are in effect for Jamaica, and the hurricane watches in effect here to the north in Cuba. So certainly interest in these areas, want to keep a real close eye on this, and all interest in the northwestern Caribbean, including the Cayman Islands. We'll want to keep an eye on this too. Now again, we have the watches and warnings in effect. A quick review of the definitions of a hurricane watch and warning. A hurricane watch means hurricane conditions are possible in the watch area within the next 36 hours. A hurricane warning means hurricane conditions are expected in the warning area in 24 hours or less. So again, just to keep you updated on that, and take a look at our satellite view here. Certainly very impressive. You can clearly see where the eye is here, and again, here's Jamaica and the Cayman Islands off to the north and to the west. So all interest in this area. We want to keep a real close eye on what's going on here with Hurricane Mitch. No doubt some very high surf is going to be a problem in these areas, and eventually perhaps the rain and the wind. So you'll want to monitor the situation very carefully. We'll continue to keep you updated and continue to keep a close eye on Hurricane Mitch. You can see this is where it stands right now. As far as the eventual track, again, we'll have to keep a real close eye on it, and we'll keep you posted.
Before I start the next one, Wayne, I said this before. I mean, if you guys want to throw in, want to say something during this, feel free to do so.
Right, quickly, can I just...
Problem is, if we say something, we miss what she's saying.
Oh, that's true, yeah. You guys can't hear that. I hope you guys are not hearing this, by the way. My dad's on the roof with the leaf blower. You guys can't hear that right now.
You can.
Sorry
about that. No, it's fine.
Don't worry about it, Nick, because I just thought it was the producer of the having a shave or something in the background.
No, my dad, he's cleaning out the gutters. But go ahead, Lois. Go
ahead. Quickly, I'll run through some of the comments. So Terry said he saw trees flying on the way back up to International Drive next morning. So many buildings down and boats upside down, and I'm due to kill my cat because she's chewing my fucking books.
Oh, really? Wow.
Hey, Chantel. Right, I've put the link out, guys, for the event and for the Paradox Club. Nicola thinks she can remember it. Chantel, just to answer Dave, right? We are starting next week.
Oh, jeez. Oh,
We
God.
are starting next year to do shows like this, but I'm splitting them between Frighteners and To the Grave and Back. On the 28th to 29th of December, I'm actually going to do 2 shows. Because I'm going to do the 2000, sorry I'm shouting guys, for the 2004 tsunami. So I'm going to do a special on that. So check that out, guys. Terry, I can tell you firsthand it was very windy, a bit of a bum pitch. I bet you enjoyed it though, Terry. Anthony says, wow, do you think it's going into the Gulf in Mexico?
You're going to have to see. It looks like it, but you got, when we start getting through, I mean, I only got probably, there's only, we're about halfway through this video. You're going to start noticing a change in direction, and then the thing you're going to see later on, it's going to be kind of shocking of what it does next, and it's not even featured on the videos. That's what I'm going to be presenting in the later part of this. Oh, jeez, Dad, you had to do the leaf blower now.
It's all right. Listen, it's like my house when we order food. Stephen always waits until it's my time for the show, and he'll order food.
Yeah, he's like literally right on top, like on top of the ceiling. So, no, I know. I get it.
Right, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Well, I'm going to take a drink.
Well, you know, actually, I wanted to kind of comment on who was it that said about the talk about other disasters. Who was that who said that?
Chantel.
Oh, Chantel. You know, she brought up one of them, the tri-state tornado. I actually do plan on doing that, on creating a presentation for that in the future. But unfortunately, it's going to be a very long time before I present it, because if you think about it, oh my God, he's right next to the window.
Tom says you've got to tell your dad to stop blowing and start watching videos on this.
Pickle Tom! Yeah, no, he should be watching This Is Tom's World. Seriously.
Teddy says background effects are good, love. I know, it's like a hairdryer.
Yeah, it really is. Well, it's a leaf blower. That's what he's using. So, but no, what I was going to say, I actually do plan on creating a presentation for the tri-state tornado. But before I even have a date of planning it, I may have to wait over some time overall, because 2025 will be the 100th anniversary of the tri-state tornado, because it occurred in March of 1925. So why not, in a better way, presenting that tornado on the actual day, 100 years to the day of that event?
As long as you don't mind next with me doing something.
I'm sorry, what was that? Now I'm starting to not hear too well because it's so loud.
Right, here goes. I'm going to raise my voice. I do apologise, guys, if I'm shouting.
Wait. He's gone from the window now. I can hear again.
Nick, did you tell your dad the subject of tonight's show?
Yeah, I did tell him. I didn't know.
Why he's got the leaf blower out.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah. See, I thought he was only going to do the front. I didn't realize he was going to do the back too. But he's away from the window now, so it shouldn't be as loud.
Next like that, I could stick this blower right up his.
Oh, jeez. Well, you guys ready to continue then?
I'm easy, Ozzy. On you go.
Okay, this is where I think now it's going to really intensify to a Category 4. So you're going to see it's getting bigger, as you guys have seen.
You by Home Depot. I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso. We'll be investigating what's happening both stateside and in the tropics, from the Atlantic right into the Pacific. First things first, and the major concern continues to be Hurricane Mitch in the Gulf, not in the Gulf, but in the Caribbean. And here we see it here on our big picture.
Oh, there might be one more clip of it as a Category
Mitch
3.
Right there, and notice the movement just kind of easing its way off to the west-northwest. This is Cuba. Here's South Florida, and here you can see Jamaica, and right in here the Cayman Islands, and off to the west, Nicaragua, Honduras, Belize, and the Yucatan. And it looks like a motion off to the west-northwest. A slow one is expected here in the next 24 to 48 hours. So residents in the Western Caribbean to keep close tabs on the system. Let's see the latest from the Hurricane Center. Hurricane hunters have been investigating here, and overnight they did find a dramatic drop-off in the pressure here, down to 949 millibars. So our hurricane is sitting over some very warm waters here in the Western Caribbean. Water temperatures are in the 80s. Above this, there's nice high pressure aloft, so systems are go for intensification, and we've seen plenty of that. Movement is west-northwest, except this graphic has a misprint on it, and that's very important here. Movement is west-northwesterly, 295 degrees, 7 miles per hour. Winds 125 miles per hour. So this is a major hurricane here, capable of quite a bit of damage. Closest land area is on the island of Jamaica, where a lot of preparations are underway. And if you're plotting at home, 16.0 north to 79.2 west. With the close proximity to Jamaica, we do have hurricane warnings in effect here. Farther north over eastern Cuba, we do have hurricane watches. And what does that mean? Well, just a reminder, a hurricane watch means hurricane conditions are possible in the watch area in the next 36 hours. And a hurricane warning means hurricane conditions are expected in the warning area in 24 hours or less. So the closest place to the hurricane is Jamaica, so that's why the hurricane warnings.
I think he's finally done.
Here. But here you can see the island of Jamaica. Right? And on the colorized satellite picture, you can see occasionally some orange, colder cloud tops, probably where you have some heavier precipitation. So there's been some heavy showers coming on in through here in Jamaica and some squalls. But the main action with the hurricane is farther south. Here's the eye of the storm right here, right near the center of circulation. This is where you have your 125 mile an hour winds, right in a small area here, right inside my hand. Right here, this is where you have your hurricane force winds and tropical storm force winds. And once you get farther out, well, you get tropical storm force winds in the squalls. Here you can see Honduras. Here's Belize, and this is the Yucatan, where there have been some showers in through here. And lastly, in the picture, that little dot right there, those are the Cayman Islands. This morning also seen as an easterly breeze here at about 15 miles per hour. So this is where the action is. And as we show you the wind profile, you can see that all the tropical storm force winds are away from Jamaica, hurricane force winds in a small area right near the center, and this is all moving off towards the west-northwest. So it looks like Jamaica may be spared in the near term anyway, the high winds with the system, but there'll be a lot of wind-driven waves, so the seas will all be churned up, so there'll be quite a bit of beach erosion and the potential for very heavy rains here at the very least. So that's why we are concerned. After that, what happens to Mitch? Well, at the present time, there's a high pressure stretched out from the Gulf of Mexico into the northern Caribbean. That has been keeping Mitch down in this position, just locked here, which has been kind of drifting its way off towards the west-northwest. Further movements here, rather uncertain. One thing we can tell you, this will be a slow mover this week. And it does look like the most probable scenario would be for this kind of drift its way off towards the west-northwest over the next couple of days. So it's a powerful hurricane, it's a slow mover, and the future down the road is uncertain. You know, will head its way towards the Yucatan, or will eventually try to turn towards the north. Yes, it's very early in the ball game, and it's a slow mover, so we'll just have to watch it.
Okay. There's about 10 or 15 minutes of footage left, so we're almost there.
Thanks for joining us. Meteorologist Mark Mancuso. A lot of activity in the tropics, so let's start you off by taking a look at our headline story, and that is Hurricane Mitch, which is sitting in the southwestern Caribbean there. On the big picture
now
here,
it's a Category 4.
To the
it's
US.
a monster
It's
hurricane
very far
now.
away from the U.S., but in the western Caribbean, we're looking at problems for Jamaica, possible problems for the Caymans, and over here around Honduras and Belize and the Yucatan certainly could be affected by the system down the road. As we take a look at the particulars as of 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time from the Hurricane Center, 16.3 north, 79.8 west. That's where we find our center of our hurricane. That's about 230 miles off to the west-southwest of Kingston, Jamaica, and it's good to 225 miles or so off to the southeast of the Cayman Islands. Movement west-northwesterly, at 7 miles per hour. Pressure continues to fall. The latest reconnaissance run through the plane there, run through the storm, showed that pressure is now down to 942 millibars. So with winds of 130 miles per hour and a pressure of 942 millibars, this is now being classified as a Category 4 on the Stafford-Simpson scale. The storm is capable of an extreme amount of damage. As we take a look at the current warnings and watches, hurricane warnings are in effect for Jamaica, hurricane watches for eastern Cuba and the Cayman Islands. These hurricane watches in the Cayman Islands may be upgraded to hurricane warnings later today. And in case you are not familiar with watches and warnings, a hurricane watch means hurricane conditions are possible in the watch area during the next 36 hours. And a hurricane warning means hurricane conditions are expected in the warning area in 24 hours or less. As you see on this visible satellite picture, the center of the storm, the eye, has made its closest approach to Jamaica. It is now pulling more off to the west-northwest. But some of these outer rain bands have affected Jamaica, the Kingston area, with winds up to 50 miles per hour this morning. And we have seen some bursts of heavy rains. There's been several inches of rain through here, so that could make for mudslides. Right now, though, let's get you a real close view of our hurricane. And as I back off the picture, there you can see the eye, quite an impressive-looking storm. This is
that
a
eye is so defined.
Near that eye, this is where we have those winds of over 120 to almost 130 miles
Look
per
at how fast it's going as
I
well.
know. That is an absolute
check that out
monster hurricane.
Colder cloud tops, some of the heavier rain bands.
Violent
here.
winds.
The Caymans are off to the northwest here, and we really don't see any significant weather there right now, but some of these outer rain bands could eventually move in that direction. Here's Honduras, and here's the center of our storm moving off towards the west-northwest, so it would appear that these areas would be threatened in the next 24, 48 hours.
Is that
west, north.
Wait, what's going on?
No, sorry, I just had to pop off for a second.
Oh, okay.
Westerly motion is expected with this powerful hurricane. Here's a look at the tropical storm force winds. They extend out about 145 miles from the center of the storm. Hurricane force winds out about 45 miles from the center of the storm, and right near the eye wall, that's where you find the extreme winds, 115 miles per hour or greater. Now, what happens to this down the road? Well, at the present time, there's a ridge off to the north and northwest of the hurricane that has been blocking it from moving northward, and it has forced it more on this west-northwesterly track. All indications are this will continue to move west-northwesterly over the next 48 to 72 hours. So that would certainly threaten the Western Caribbean countries here. So that will be the greatest concern. But in the near term, Jamaica will see bursts of heavy rains and high winds, and the Caymans could be affected with that later today and into tonight.
Yeah, there's like 2 or 3 more clips, and then that should be it.
Well, things are busy tonight in the
Jim
tropics,
Cantori.
as you may or may not know. And, of course, we have a storm in the west that will keep you engulfed in clouds and even some rain and snow for the next couple of days. Let's go ahead and check things out as we look at our tropical update. First order of business tonight on the storm watch. And, of course, looking at you with that perfect symmetric eye is that hurricane we call Mitch right here. It continues to move on off toward the west-northwest, and I'll preface our discussion about Mitch with this. Last night, the pressure with Mitch was 973 millibars at approximately this time. Right now, at best guess, or at least the last report from the hurricane hunters, it's 924 millibars. That's a 50 millibar drop just about in 24 hours. And that's incredible deepening. If you remember Opal in October of 95, when we saw a tremendous fall here, where it got down even below 920 millibars, believe it or not, that's the kind of deepening that Mitch has undergone. The good news is that we don't have a big trough in the west coming to scoop it up like we did with Opal. At least, not yet. So we're going to have to be patient with this.
Wow, 150 mile per hour winds.
4 o'clock, 16.6 north, 80.7 west, 190 miles south-southeast of Grand Cayman Island. Winds at 150, so it's only 5 miles away from being a Category 5 hurricane. It's moving west-northwest at 8. Pressure from the hurricane hunter aircraft at 924 millibars. Now, what we have is some good news. The hurricane warnings for the island of Jamaica have been dropped, even though just last hour they had their strongest wind that I've seen today, 35 knots and a heavy rain shower with a gust at Kingston. And you can see here the watches are still up from the Cayman Islands across Cuba. Now, there is some speculation that these may be discontinued later on tonight, but we still have the watches out for the Cayman Islands, so please keep that in mind. Satellite picture is incredibly impressive. We take a look at the infrared imagery. You can see the coldest cloud tops here in red, and what we saw today is a void of this deeper red on the east side. And all of a sudden during the afternoon it started to fill in all the way around. We could tell that it was deepening, and it kind of looks like it's trying to do that again. So this thing is just wanting to bomb itself out, and no doubt that appears so. But the good news is it's sitting over here in the middle of the Western Caribbean and not really bothering too many people. And if it wants to bomb out here, there could not be a better place for it to do so. So let's hope that it does just that. You can see the squally weather over Jamaica tonight, and you can see that we don't have much left for that.
In the eye, that's why you have clear.
Well, this was one of the few clips from CNN. It's very brief.
Hurricane, and it's moving very slowly through warm water. Therefore,
so this
it
was
is going
kind of
to
the talk on
intensify.
almost all
Already
news.
winds up to 150 miles an hour. At 156 miles an hour, it becomes a Category 5 storm on the Saffir-Simpson scale, which is the most powerful hurricane you can get on that scale. The coordinate 16.6 north, 80.7 west. That's 190 miles.
Yeah, see, it was a real short one. Okay, I think there's 2 more left.
That was very short.
Yeah, it was.
Top of the hour, time now for Stormwatch, sponsored by Home Depot. And we are dealing with 2 areas of concern tonight. One, the area of unsettled weather in the southwestern United States, reaching up into the Rocky Mountain states. We'll take a look at that momentarily, but first we're going to take a trip to the tropics and tell you about a powerful late-season hurricane. We're, of course, speaking of Hurricane Mitch. So to the tropics we go. Here's the big picture. Mitch, pretty much the only story in the Atlantic, and by and large, even in the Eastern Pacific. We'll take a look at Tropical Depression Lester momentarily, but right here in the Northern Caribbean Sea, we are dealing with a major hurricane. Category 4 on the Saffir-Simpson scale, on the verge of becoming a Category 5 system. As of 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center, center of Mitch 200 miles south of Grand Cayman Island with top winds of 150 miles an hour, and the system was moving west at 8 miles an hour, and the pressure estimated at 924 millibars. We say estimated because it's been a few hours since the Air Force Reserve has sent a Hurricane Hunter aircraft through the storm. A new aircraft flight heading on in even as we speak, and we should be getting new data back from that over the next few hours. And that is critical to establishing the top wind speeds of the storm and the central pressure. They'll drop a package of instruments down in the eye, and that will measure the air pressure and various other weather parameters on the way down, radio it back to the plane, and the plane will then radio it back to the National Hurricane Center. Next advisory from the NHC due out at 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and at that time we'll see how the new information from the Hurricane Hunters will play into the status of Hurricane Mitch. Now, as I mentioned, it's right now an extreme potential for damage, Category 4 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. If it makes it to 156 miles an hour or greater in top wind speed, it would be classified as a catastrophic Category 5 storm. Think Camille. That was a Category 5 storm when it came ashore in the Gulf Coast in 1969. Right now, only the Cayman Islands are under watches and warnings. Hurricane watch, tropical storm warning. However, the National Hurricane Center has recommended that hurricane warnings be posted from Limon, Honduras down to the Nicaraguan border. But because of communications difficulties communicating with the Honduran meteorological personnel, so far we've not been able to confirm that officially the warnings have been raised. So right now it's just a recommendation, but still, if you live here in Honduras, Guatemala, Belize, the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, you certainly should be very concerned about what's going to be happening with Hurricane Mitch. Here's those tropical storm warnings. Let's get to a picture. I want to show you a picture of this thing. It is a very impressive looking storm. Extremely symmetrical, eye wall completely wrapped around here, very strong convection, very very good outflow from the top of the storm. This thing is getting rid of its exhaust extremely well, and you can see it's drifting to the west here. A dangerous system, very dangerous. So this is something we'll be watching here in the late season. But for now, it's out in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. It's still, as it drifts westward, it could begin to affect the coast of Central America and up toward the Yucatan Peninsula. So keep a very close eye on this.
Okay, this is the last one for this
Storm
part.
Watch, sponsored by Touchstone Energy. Thanks a lot for joining us early on this Monday morning. In a moment, we'll talk about the stormy weather, the rain and the snow in the southwestern part of the United States. Let's begin, though, with the latest on the tropics and what has turned out to be a very powerful hurricane in the Caribbean. Hurricane Mitch right now has sustained winds of 150 miles per hour. And some intensification is expected to take place. That could put it in the sustained wind, the category of 155 or greater, which would make it a Category 5 hurricane later on today. That is the official.
Sorry about that, guys.
No, you're fine.
For sure,
You're
right
fine.
now, it's a devastating hurricane, but fortunately, it is out over open water at this point. It's moving slowly, too, west at 7. And the latest coordinates would be 16.5 north and 82.3 west, 200 miles or so southwest of Cayman Island. And look at the pressure. It's 923 millibars or 27.26 inches of mercury. Well, hurricane warnings now are
now they're putting the warnings out for Central America.
And also the coast of Honduras and right down to the Honduran-Nicaraguan border. Hurricane watches for the Cayman Islands. All the hurricane watch has been discontinued, watch and warning for Jamaica. Nevertheless, the southerly fetch through here will mean pounding surf and probably some beach erosion, coastal flooding in Jamaica, and certainly in the Cayman Islands the next 24 to 36 hours. Here's the wind field. Those 150 mile per hour sustained winds, of course, in the eye wall, and hurricane force winds here. Tropical storm force winds extending out far enough to be impacting the coastal sections of Central America right now. Let's take a look at the satellite picture, and as we do, it is an extremely well-developed hurricane, as you can see, with a sharply defined eye, which, according to the reconnaissance aircraft, is only about 10 to 12 miles across, surrounded by very cold cloud tops, indicated by the dark red. You see that surrounding the entire eye. Now, in the upper levels, there is high pressure, and the outflow at the top of the storm continues to be excellent. With that and the warm sea surface conditions, it is felt that further intensification may take place today, and that could put Mitch in the Category 5, into the Category 5 status later on, with top sustained winds of 155 miles per hour or stronger, and that means gusts up to 190 to 195. Now, where is Mitch going to go? Well, right now there's high pressure to the north, and with a clockwise flow around, it is sort of forcing Mitch off to the west-northwest, and that is the most likely track right now, onto the west-northwest towards Central America or the Yucatan Peninsula. It's a very slow-moving system, and for the southern United States, it's simply a wait-and-see, monitor closely type of situation. It's more of a threat, we think, right now to this region of the world, but we'll keep you posted just in case there is a change in the track of Mitch.
All right, so we're going to take a little break, obviously, from the videos. Do you guys have anything you'd like to say before I continue onwards? Any comments?
While I'm watching all of those clips,
I'll be back to.
I keep thinking to myself how lucky everybody was. Because that could have been so much far worse than what it was.
Exactly.
I mean, most hurricanes, they are formed in the tropics and in the Caribbean, but they're also formed in the waters around Cape Verdean Islands of West Africa.
That's correct. That's where most tropical systems are born.
If Hurricane Mitch had have formed off the coast of West Africa and travelled across, that would have been a Category 5 before it even got to the West Indies.
It really would have. And although most of the time it was spared, I mean, it spared most land when it was at its highest point, it's still obviously, as you're going to see later, it's still going to have absolutely devastating consequences, when it hits land. And but I'm hoping we can try to get through this today. There was actually one group of people who unfortunately were not so lucky when it came to its high strength. So we'll get to that shortly. But to kind of give an insight now of exactly when it did eventually hit land, here were actually the results. The NHC estimated that Mitch intensified into a Category 5 hurricane at 1200 UTC on October 26. At 1900 UTC that day, at peak intensity, the hurricane hunters observed flight level winds of 193 miles per hour in the hurricane's northeastern quadrant, suggesting peak maximum sustained winds of 180 miles per hour for 15 hours, which I think was one of the longest stretches of time to have winds that strong. Around the same time, a drop zone recorded a minimum pressure of 905 millibars, which was then the lowest in the month of October. At the time, Mitch's strong winds was the third longest period of such winds while off the northern coast of Honduras on record, after the continuous 18 hours of 178 miles per hour winds or higher by Hurricane Camille in 1969 and Hurricane Dog in 1950. Additionally, Mitch was considered the fourth most intense Atlantic hurricane, also tied with Hurricane Camille, and the strongest in the month of October, surpassing Hurricane Haiti in 1961. Both records were surpassed by subsequent hurricanes. Now, at the time, the hurricane was located about 100 miles north off the north coast of Honduras. Its tropical storm force winds extended 175 miles from the center, and hurricane force winds reached 60 miles from the center. Initially, the National Hurricane Center and various tropical cyclone forecast models anticipated a turn to the north, threatening the Yucatan Peninsula. Now, I got one final video that I'm going to present. This is when Hurricane Mitch was at its strongest point. And so now we're going to really see the true power of what it's like on the radar. So this is the last one. This is going to last a little while, but this was at its tops, at its highest strength. So definitely something worth checking out. So here we go.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel for Storm Watch, sponsored by Walls. We have the strongest hurricane of the Atlantic season rotating in the Western Caribbean at this hour. And for a full update, here's John Hope, hurricane expert here at the Weather Channel.
Yes, indeed, Marshall. That is the strongest hurricane of this season and one of the most powerful ones we've ever seen in the Caribbean, certainly this time of year. It's not quite as strong as
Category 5.
was back in 1988 and also Allen back in 1980. But a very powerful storm. Several have asked me if that was the strongest storm we ever had this late in the year. I don't think it is quite. We had one hurricane in 1932, even early November, that hit up here in the south coast of Cuba. I believe that hurricane was a little bit stronger than this one is, but this is powerful enough. It's really an awesome hurricane. Centered at 16.7, 89.2. That's about 201 miles. Pretty precise measurement there, southwest of Grand Cayman Island. The winds are 155 miles an hour, and it's moving toward the west about 8. Now, what we believe is going to happen here, it's going to slow even more and not move very much. Basically, we still expect to find this hurricane somewhere in the Western Caribbean Sea 2 or 3 days down the road. In the meantime, we have hurricane warnings out from the border here of Nicaragua and Honduras over to Limon in Honduras. They may be extended west a little bit farther. Swan Island is kind of under the gun. They're about as close as anybody. But I would like to comment that so far, people have been very fortunate to have not been directly impacted by this hurricane. Even down here in Honduras, it's far enough away, so they're barely getting tropical storm force winds. They have not had tropical storm force winds in the Cayman Islands or in Jamaica. And of course, those watches and warnings for Jamaica have now been discontinued. But we want to remind you what this means. A hurricane watch, hurricane conditions are possible within the next 36 hours. A hurricane warning, we expect to see hurricane conditions within the next 24 hours or less. So what it is here is a very slow movement. It's very well defined. We can't see that it's getting any less organized than it was a short time ago. We haven't had a reconnaissance aircraft in there recently to check the pressure force for sure, but there is one on the way down there now, and this aircraft will be in the area at about a little after noon Eastern Standard Time. And here we can show you what this looks like as the sun rose this morning. You can see just an awesome look at where this, we only see that kind of structure in the very strongest of hurricanes. And we can zoom out on that a little bit and show you what the overall picture looks like. This is Grand Cayman Island up here. The strongest winds reported at Grand Cayman overnight were about 30 miles an hour. And again, as far as I can see, they're barely getting tropical storm force winds here in Honduras. But we certainly would urge people in the country of Belize and also in the Yucatan Peninsula to watch very carefully here. The hurricane force winds extending out about 70 miles and the tropical storm force winds about 140 miles as this meanders slowly toward the west. Now, a lot of people want to know if this is going to affect the United States. Well, I wish we could tell you. Right now, we know it's going to stay down. We feel sure it will stay down in the Caribbean for some time to come. And whether or not it might eventually affect the United States is just simply too early to tell. And if that were to happen, it would be late in the week at the very earliest before that would be likely to happen.
Hurricane Mitch is threatening the Cayman Islands. Will it threaten the U.S. as well? The latest on this very powerful storm, plus your weather just ahead on Weather Center.
Till the top of the hour. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel for this edition of Storm Watch. I'm Lisa Moser. Intense conditions in the Caribbean. We turn to our hurricane expert, John Hope now. John?
Thank you very much, Lisa. We are looking at an awesome hurricane in the Caribbean Sea. It's taking its place now, or is about to, among some of the strongest hurricanes ever observed in the Atlantic. We have a new reconnaissance aircraft out there. The report just indicating the pressure in this has gone down to 906 millibars. That's down from 923 on the previous one. We're awaiting a new advisory, but we feel pretty sure with this kind of information, this will be classified as a Category 5 hurricane. But that kind of a pressure is comparable to what Hurricane Camille was, for example, when it struck the coast back in 1969. You know, we've only had 2 Category 5s ever hit the United States. There have been several more out there that didn't hit the U.S. And speaking of hitting the United States, it's much too early to tell, especially the way this hurricane is behaving. It's not moving very rapidly. We don't expect it to move very rapidly in the near future. We expect the center of the hurricane to stay basically over the northwestern Caribbean for the better part of the next 2 or 3 days. And then what happens to it after that, we'll just have to wait and see. In any case, if it were to affect the United States, it's about 650 miles from Miami. It would be very late in the week before we think that would happen. So we have plenty of time, not much movement. And we've been very fortunate so far that this hurricane is really as strong as it is, hasn't really struck any land. Centered on the latest advisory, we'll have a new one out momentarily. And again, I suspect this is going to be raised up to a Category 5 hurricane. And that pressure, we do have information that it has dropped now to 960 millibars, centered 200 miles south-southwest of Grand Cayman. Now, taking a look at the warnings here, we do have warnings up along the north coast of Honduras, but so far we haven't observed any tropical storm force winds. I might say that with this kind of a setup here, the mountains in Honduras, some of that flow from the Pacific side coming in over the mountains is going to cause heavy rain. In fact, we had a report of a bridge out already between San Pedro Sula and Tegucigalpa with heavy rain in the interior. We have a hurricane watch out for the Cayman Islands, but again, this has stayed far enough away from the Cayman so that they're not getting very strong winds either. The strongest winds we've seen, for example, with Grand Cayman overnight this morning was about 30 miles an hour. So fortunately, with a hurricane of this intensity, it hasn't directly struck any land, and we hope it never does before it weakens.
Wish it could have missed land.
Zoom in on that eye, and you can see a very classic hurricane eye, what we call, and it goes down kind of stepwise, and therefore that's why they call it a stadium effect. Looking at the visible picture, it certainly is maintaining its identity. We have this well-developed central dense overcast right around the eye. We can see that perhaps a little bit more clearly on the infrared picture where we colorize these tops. So this shows no sign so far of diminishing. Now, as far as the wind field, it's not as large as some hurricanes are. We have the 60 miles or so, 60, 70 miles hurricane force winds, and then about 140 miles of tropical storm force. And this will give you an idea of what it looks like situated relative to the United States. As you can see, it's a long ways from South Florida. Well, we're not, that is just all dissipated as we can see on the satellite picture. Above.
Yeah, here we go.
In between the mainland of China and Taiwan.
At this time, let's take a look at what is a Category 5 hurricane. Well, what it is exactly is with winds, sustained winds above 155 miles per hour. The barometric pressure has been falling today. It is down to an estimated 906 millibars. That's pretty low. That means it was falling overnight last night and for much of this morning. We're looking at the outer bands. They are still sprawling across the Cayman Islands here, and we may see a few more inches of rainfall, and that could be a problem for the area. That may mean some localized flooding here. Jamaica, we're faring up a little bit better. I'm going to put this into motion as I continue to get you orientated. We're looking at Cuba, just seeing some of the extreme outward bands coming in with maybe a sprinkle or two, and rain with cloudiness at times may be a little bit more impressive, but for the most part, we're faring up much better in Cuba here today. The storm has been on a westward track. So we're at concern, and awareness should be heightened all along Honduras so far to the north of Nicaragua, but certainly things in Belize are not at what we would like for them to be at this hour. Certainly preparation is on the minds of all out here in the Caribbean. Let me share with you, it's a very strong hurricane, and the hurricane winds are extending away from the center 45 miles outward, tropical storm winds extending out 175 miles, and so already we are looking for some of the wind tropical storm strength winds to be grazing across the coastal shores of Honduras at this time. Warnings were placed in effect across the extreme eastern areas of Honduras. It is likely that we will see additional warnings. Perhaps the extreme eastern areas will take up a warning before the day is out, and even perhaps Belize. We may be seeing warnings placed out here. As far as the Cayman Islands go, we are currently under a hurricane watch, but we are also under a tropical storm warning at this time. Give you the latest statistics on Hurricane Mitch. Again, the sustained winds at 170 miles per hour. The millibar pressure down to 906. Really, this is a Category 5. And of course, any landfall could mean catastrophic conditions as a result of Hurricane Mitch coming to landfall. Let's hope this isn't the case, but we'll continue to update you on this situation in the Caribbean. Dan?
Awesome hurricane. As a matter of fact, as far as we can tell, there have not been more than 3 or 4 hurricanes ever in the Atlantic any stronger than this one is now. The top winds are up to 170 miles an hour. That makes it a very solid Category 5 hurricane. Only 2 Category 5s have ever actually hit the United States. One was the Keys hurricane of 1935, which hit here in the Florida Keys. Of course, so the one hit up the Hurricane Camille in 1969. People are worried and concerned, as well they might be, about what this hurricane might eventually do to the United States. And the answer to that today, while we're really not sure yet, down in the week, quite a lot later, we think. Let me go ahead and show you the latest statistics here. 17.0 north, 83.2 west. That's 195 miles now to the south-southwest of Grand Cayman Island. Winds 170 miles an hour, Category 5 hurricane, moving toward the west-northwest at 8 miles an hour. And the lowest central pressure, indeed, 906 millibars. We have hurricane warnings out for the north coast of Honduras, but looking at the winds being reported so far, we don't see winds anywhere near that strong yet on the coast, not even any tropical storm force winds there. We still have hurricane watches out for the Cayman Islands, and also we have out for the Cayman Islands a tropical storm warning. Now, so far, they haven't had any tropical storm force winds even in the Caymans. Strongest wind in Grand Cayman overnight and this morning has been about 30 or so miles per hour, and that's just about it. But with this hurricane meandering around the way it is and the way it's forecast to do, we wouldn't say that the Caymans are necessarily off the hook yet, because we think it's going to kind of edge up farther toward the north. So people in the Caymans, even though it's been great so far, need to stay in touch with what's happening here. This is the eye of the hurricane on a visible picture, zeroing in on it. It's a classical eye. It's not the kind of an eye you'll ever see very often on any hurricane. And so far, the great thing about it has been that this has not directly impacted any land, and we certainly would like to have that go on for a lot longer before any land is directly impacted. Here's another visible picture in the last few hours. Infrared, where we colorize the tops for you, and you can see this ring of red basically surrounding the eye. And that shows us that this is about as well organized as a hurricane can be. Now, looking at the wind field, it's not tremendously large. We have the hurricane force winds extending out 70 or so miles, and the tropical storm force winds about 140. And according to this analysis here, they're just on the very edge of Honduras there, although, as I said before, none of the reporting stations are actually reporting winds of tropical storm force. Here you can see how far it is from the U.S. It's about 640 miles or so, almost due south, a little bit southwest of Miami at the present time.
Now, these next two clips, I believe this was when Hurricane Mitch had its strongest point, like the strongest wind speed. So this is where things start getting even more interesting.
On Storm Watch, we have still a kind of unsettled pattern in the west, some rain showers, thunderstorms, and even some mountain snows. We're going to take a look at that, but the big story today is in the tropics, intense Hurricane Mitch, and with a tropical update, here's Dr. Steve Lyons.
Well, thank you, Mike, and welcome to the Tropical Update. We have some interesting weather for you tonight here on the Weather Channel. Tropical speaking, we have Hurricane Mitch out here in the Caribbean, and boy, is it a strong one. One of the strongest hurricanes on record, probably in the top 5, maybe the 4th strongest, and it is definitely the strongest in October. As a matter of fact, there have been only 2 Category 5 hurricanes in the month of October, and one of them was Hurricane Hattie that ran over Belize in 1961. Some of you may remember that. Let's get to the latest statistics on it. As of 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, location was about 200 miles southwest of the Grand Cayman Islands.
Jeez.
And look at those winds, 180 miles per hour. This is a devastating hurricane if it were to hit land right now. Moving to the west-northwest at 8 miles per hour. And the good news is that even though we've got these hurricane warnings up along the coast of Honduras and Nicaragua, and we have some watches up over the Cayman Islands, the circulation center is relatively small. And that's good news because all of the strong winds are out over the water, and we don't see any real strong winds along the coastal zone. And we hope that this thing spins down a little bit before it gets too close to land to affect it that much. As we go on and look a little bit farther into what's going on, we see some rather interesting things in the tropical circulation here. Here's the visible view here. You can see the circulation is moving off to the west-northwest rather slowly. And it looks like it's going to start to slow down up in here and make a little slower track, even though it's moving now at a fairly persistent pace. We think it's going to slow down here, take a little more northward track and jog up into here, still remaining away from land. We can see as we look here, sun is starting to set, and you can see half the shadow of the eye is covered in shadows now. So there's very, very cold cloud tops, and we can see that on the infrared satellite imagery here. Look at the symmetry to this hurricane. This is a good indication of how strong they are when the symmetry is so well organized and the eye is so well defined. Now, the thing right now that people have to worry about immediately is the surf that it's generating along the Yucatan Peninsula down to Belize and all along the coast here. The good news is that the circulation is not that large, but still the surf is on the order of 30 to 35 feet near the eye wall and out in front of it, and that surf is going to come along the coast no matter what happens. So be careful with the high surf all along the Central American coast and all up into the Caymans as well. And that will produce some flooding along the lower lying coastal zones from the breaking waves that can be as high as 30 to 35 feet from this hurricane. Very, very devastating system. You can see the plume coming off to the north here. And when we look at the wind radii, you can see tropical storm force radii in yellow, although we have not seen too many winds approaching tropical storm force over the coastline here. They may be gusting to that in shower activity, and I have seen a couple of winds now recently of about 30 miles per hour along the coast. The real strong core is rather small, which is great news, because we don't want it anywhere near the coast. This is a potentially deadly hurricane. And as we go out into the Atlantic and look at the overall view, we see westerlies up here. And so the future track of this is rather indecisive. It's going to move rather slowly up into this area. And then we expect slow decrease in intensity, which is good news. But it's going to stay rather strong here for another 48 hours or so. And that's going to be rather dangerous.
Before I play the next one, what do you think so far, Wayne?
It's difficult to gauge, really, because, you know, when you look at it, you think to yourself, it's a Category 5. You know, it's a catastrophic hurricane.
Yeah.
And yet at this point, there isn't much illustration as to how much life is lost or how much damage has been made, simply because it's been out in the sea.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's the thing sometimes you don't realize, is that it's not always lives that are at stake that are out on land. It's always about also those, like you said, close to the sea areas.
Yeah, but you then get it's knowing the fact that it's only a couple more days into when it disperses, and yet in those couple of days it caused that much damage and that many fatalities.
Right.
And that's literally because it got closer to land.
It did. It really did.
And that's when it sort of comes home a little bit more to you as to the devastation that it can cause.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. So, I understand, obviously, they only, like in this case, what the Weather Channel and other meteorologists had at the time, I mean, it was the best you could do, is hopefully, predict. So no one's really at fault. I mean, I'm sure that, you've already heard a couple of times they were hoping it would not impact land, but it still did. But you can only do so much with what you have at that time.
Yeah, and it's okay having these storm warning technologies, like the old emergency broadcast sirens out on mobile phones and things like that. But we're talking about 1998. Correct. Technology wasn't exactly wonderful in them days. It was still there, and you still had the tornado sirens and things like that. But when you're looking at a hurricane that's out in the sea, you don't know whether it's going to make landfall, and at that point it's slowing down. Right. So you think it may not actually get as far as land, simply because at current rate it's slowing down. So you think, well, if it slows down and stops, it's going to disperse before it reaches landfall. So they hold back sending out the warnings to people, but it's then down to the people themselves to look at the weather reports and go, do I want to stay here and get hit by this potential deadly hurricane? Or do I get out of the place?
Obviously, I would get out immediately.
If you've got a Category 5 hurricane coming towards you, I think I'd be moving out of its way myself.
Yeah, I'd be like, no way I'm staying. I'm getting the hell out of here. But yeah, this is like I said, this was excuse me, I cannot talk today. This was when it was at its highest wind speed. So just the wind speeds itself, 180 miles an hour. That a message like that or a wind speed like that would tell me to get out of there immediately too. If it's even beyond, literally beyond the normal wind speed of a Category 5 hurricane.
Yeah.
Watching the tropical update, we have an extraordinarily strong hurricane in the Western Caribbean. In fact, it's a Category 5, and Dr. Steve Lyons is going to talk about that. And then we will return to the U.S. current map and focus on what's going on stateside. But right now, here's Dr. Lyons.
Well, thank you, Bob. And we do have a very powerful Category 5 hurricane, Hurricane Mitch, out here in the northwestern Caribbean Sea, moving to the west-northwest slowly. Let's zoom in on that and see what it looks like. Look at the symmetry to this circulation. Very intense, powerful, dangerous hurricane. And right now, The wind core is relatively small, and we have not seen strong winds anywhere along the coastline. We've seen some very heavy surf pounding the coast, and that will continue. And we've seen some rain bands over the Cayman Islands. We've seen some rain bands over the Guatemala coast and heading toward Belize as well. But so far, the winds have stayed over the ocean with very, very high waves that are going to continue to impact the coast. As of 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, here's the latest on Mitch, about 215 miles southwest of Grand Cayman Island. Winds 180 miles per hour. Extremely dangerous hurricane, moving west-northwest at 8. You can see that Category 5 hurricane, if it were to landfall, is catastrophic. That's above 155, and we're up to 180 on this thing, so very dangerous circulation. Currently, we have hurricane warnings up along the Honduras coast, hurricane watches along the Belize coast. These may change to hurricane warnings later this evening, early tomorrow. We also have hurricane watches up for the Cayman Islands. But as I mentioned before, so far, no strong winds yet. But that does not mean that they're occurring now. Within 24 or within 36 is what those watch and warnings indicate. Also, tropical storm warnings up for the Cayman Islands, and so far we have not seen those other than in gusts. Keep in mind, this is one of the strongest Atlantic Basin hurricanes ever, ranks number 4 here as of 1998. Earlier today, 905 millibars. The record, of course, Gilbert with 888 in 1988. You can see here now the track forecast. What are we going to see? We have upper level westerly winds, so if in fact this does get into the Gulf of Mexico, we definitely expect it to weaken. Having a hurricane this strong is very, very difficult to maintain, and so we're hoping that it weakens rather dramatically before it gets too close to the coastline. Right now, the major impact is going to be high surf, and that's going to raise the water level along the coast anywhere from 3 to 5 feet, whether the hurricane reaches the coast or not. This is not associated with storm surge, but what we call wave setup. So that's a major danger. Also, flooding along the coastline is a big potential.
On the Weather Channel, 10 minutes before the hour, you've tuned in just in time for Storm Watch. Of course, our top story is Hurricane Mitch. This edition of Storm Watch is sponsored by Touchstone Energy. Let's give you the very latest on Mitch as we begin our tropical update. Mitch is centered at 17.4 degrees north, 84.8 degrees west, and that puts it 250 miles southwest of the Cayman Islands, or 150 miles east of the coast of Honduras. Winds of 180 miles an hour associated with Mitch. It's moving west at 8 miles an hour. Here you see our hurricane symbol in the Western Caribbean. The pressure has increased over the last 12 hours or so, now up to 917 millibars. Of course, yesterday afternoon, the pressure bottomed out at 905 millibars, making Mitch the 4th strongest hurricane ever in the Atlantic Basin. And actually, dropping down to 905 millibars. It's the strongest hurricane ever in the month of October. So definitely a very, very intense Hurricane Mitch is as we continue to watch this system churn. Now, winds of 180 miles an hour. This time yesterday morning, winds were sustained at 155 miles an hour, and that put it at the threshold of a Category 5. So with winds up to 180 miles an hour, you know it's well a Category 5, and that means it has the potential to produce catastrophic damage if it makes landfall. Where is the system going? What landmass is in its path? Well, we've been watching the Yucatan Peninsula sticking out here. Of course, this being the Caribbean islands, Cuba, the Caribbean Sea actually, Cuba, Jamaica here, the Cayman Islands. We have Honduras here, Belize, and Guatemala. Hurricane warnings have been issued by the government of Mexico here for the Yucatan Peninsula. Also, the government of Guatemala has issued a hurricane warning, and hurricane warnings extend along the coast of Honduras as well. Hurricane watches for the coast of Belize, but these could be upgraded to hurricane warnings as Mitch, again, is moving pretty much due west. Miles an
hour. And as it continues on this path with hurricane watches and warnings, that means this system has the potential now to produce hurricane conditions within the next 24 to 36 hours. That's what hurricane watch and hurricane warning mean. Here's a look at our latest satellite picture, which shows a very well-defined hurricane here, a remarkably defined eye in the center of the dense overcast clouds here. You can see the darker reds indicating very cold cloud tops and a very strong pressure gradient between the eye and the eye wall here, and that's why the pressures have been so low with this particular hurricane. You can see it's winding up. Hurricane force winds extend out about 70 miles or so from the center, and tropical storm force winds extend out about 145 miles or so. So we're already seeing or feeling some tropical storm force winds along the coast of Honduras here. Also swells and seas really piling up. We've had reports of flooding in this part. So definitely some big problems with Hurricane Mitch here, churning the waters in the western Caribbean. Here's a look at the wind profile, and you can see how the winds are extending out, the tropical storm force winds along the coast of Honduras. The broader perspective shows Hurricane Mitch in the western Caribbean, the fourth strongest ever in the history of the Atlantic Basin. Where is it going from this point? Well, we are practically certain that it will continue on its course to the west at 8 miles an hour over the next 24 hours. Beyond that, it's still fairly uncertain. Different computer models take it across the Yucatan Peninsula and perhaps back into the southern Gulf of Mexico or the Bay of Campeche. So we'll definitely watch Hurricane Mitch for you and give you more updates.
Oh, now this, there's about two or three more clips. This one is probably actually considered the most notorious one for some reason. I'm not sure why, but this was probably one of the first that was ever uploaded a few years after Hurricane Mitch. So let's take a look at it.
In the Caribbean. I'm Lisa Moser. We turn to our tropical weather expert, John Hope, for the latest details. John?
It has indeed been intense down there, and the reason we have a very intense hurricane, certainly one of the most powerful ones we've ever seen in the Atlantic Basin this late in the year anyway, and not very many other hurricanes that have ever been out there that's much stronger. We have a new advisory out now, and I don't think I'm going to have the graphic for you, but the winds now have been increased to 180 miles per hour. That makes it a very dangerous Category 5 hurricane. The bottom limit for Category 5 is just above 155 miles an hour. Here, this one is all the way up to 180. Now, it's moving toward the west-northwest rather slowly, and a lot of folks here in the United States and around the Caribbean want to know where this thing is going to go, but there's still some uncertainty out there. I just have to tell you that, and that's because it's not moving very fast. It's not forecast to move very rapidly at all. We think that it's going to hang around the Caribbean, the Northwest Caribbean, for as long as 2 days or maybe a little bit longer than that. There's some possibility that it could come farther north. There's a possibility it could edge in toward Belize or the Yucatan Peninsula. And we just are not yet in a position to say, and the National Hurricane Center isn't either. And I don't believe anybody else is. So all we can do is watch this very carefully and let you know what happens. Now, I don't have that latest advisory. Yes, I do too. From another source. Can we get that? Yeah, we have that up here. Very latest here, 17.2 and 83.6. That's now 200 miles southwest of Grand Cayman Island. And as you see there, the winds have increased to 180 miles an hour. The barometric pressure is an incredibly low, 906 millibars. Now, this is a pretty compact storm. Let me go ahead and show you the warning area here. We have hurricane warnings, and incidentally, on this new advisory, the hurricane warnings have been extended westward to cover the entire north coast of Honduras, that just in the new advisory coming out. But as of this hour, they're not actually reporting any hurricane force winds or even tropical storm force winds on the north coast of Honduras. Hurricane watch and tropical storm warnings remain in effect up here for the Cayman Islands. The winds in the Cayman Islands are not very strong either, just about 9 or 10 miles an hour this afternoon, and that is all. So what you have in between the Cayman Islands and Honduras is this incredibly powerful hurricane with top winds up to 180 miles an hour. Here's a satellite picture to show you a very close up, and you can see this awesome looking eye. Stadium effect, which means it's just wider at the top than it is at the bottom. It goes down kind of stepwise to a small eye, 20 miles in diameter, down at the surface of the ocean. We can zoom out on this a little bit. There you see that eye of the hurricane moving toward the west-northwest, and up there is Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula. Here's the infrared picture where we colorized tops for you, and it is certainly an extremely well-developed hurricane and shows no signs of getting any less organized as time goes by. Here's the wind field, not extending out too far, 140 miles and perhaps even a little less than that. The tropical storm force winds, the hurricane force winds out 60 or 70 miles or so from the center. Now, here's a picture where you can get a little better perspective how far it is from the United States. It's about 640 miles or so south of Miami, Florida. And again, if it's going to affect the United States, it's not going to do it until much later on in the week. It certainly isn't going to do it right away. Now, we're not quite ready to declare the hurricane season over yet, but out in the Atlantic, in the middle Atlantic and the East Atlantic, we don't see anything out there we think is a candidate for the next storm at all. And we're glad to be able to report finally that Lester has been met its demise. That's no more advisories on Lester.
All right, this one is going to be a little low, so you're probably going to have to turn up the volume a little bit.
9 minutes before the hour. Thanks for joining us for this edition of
Yeah, there's, like I said, two more clips at least.
The very latest on the tropics. Hurricane Mitch in the Western Caribbean. This is the 5 or 7 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. It puts the hurricane closer to the Yucatan Peninsula, Belize City, about 200 miles west of Belize City. It is packing winds of 180 miles an hour, moving west at 8 miles an hour. The estimated lowest pressure, 917 millibars. Now, yesterday afternoon, the pressures bottomed out to 905 millibars, and that made it the 4th most powerful hurricane in history, the Atlantic Basin. And with that 905, it makes it the most powerful hurricane ever in the month of October, because typically this time of tropical season we are talking about winding down the season, but Hurricane Mitch continues to wind up as it is churning the waters of the Western Caribbean. Yesterday we had hurricane warnings for the island of Jamaica. No longer are those warnings in effect because the system is moving west and away from Jamaica, but it is moving closer to the Yucatan Peninsula and Belize. Thus, hurricane warnings are in effect for the coastal areas here, the east coast of the Yucatan, the coastal areas of Belize, and all along the Honduras coast here. As you see, the eye of the storm is getting closer. Now, hurricane warnings mean that the system could be moving in, and you'll start to feel the effects of the hurricane within 24 hours or less. Here's the latest satellite picture now of Hurricane Mitch. This satellite picture is about 4 hours old, but you can still get the general idea that the eye itself is in the middle of the overcast.
Looks like it's starting to
here.
move a little bit more to the
We've had
southwest,
reports
actually.
That you even see actually that the northwestern semicircle of the system, the higher cloud tops, yesterday at a time were eroded a little bit. You don't see the lighter or the darker reds here, but since then we have noticed the colder clouds to wrap all the way around the eye, and we've had reports, believe it or not, that these clouds are so cold, these cloud tops are so high and so cold that even had a temperature of some 90 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. So very cold cloud tops wrapping around the center or the eye of the storm. A very, very intense storm capable of producing catastrophic conditions as it makes landfall. Right now, it looks as though it's going closer to Guatemala, or should I say Belize, here in the Yucatan Peninsula, with a wind field. Hurricane force winds extend out from the center 60 miles or so, and the tropical storm force winds extend out from the center over 175 miles. So we're already feeling the effects of this storm from Hurricane Mitch all the way along the coast of Honduras, with tropical storm force winds being felt right now. We will continue to watch Mitch. Right now, it looks as though
Over the next 24 hours, it will stay on this same course. And say whether it will cross on over and re-emerge back into the Bay of Campeche. That is certainly a possibility. So all folks along the Gulf Coast need to stay alert to Hurricane Mitch. No other organized tropical systems across the Atlantic Basin at this time.
That heavy rain will be a problem as Hurricane Mitch continues to buzz off to the west. The satellite image is about 4 to 5, 6 hours old now, as we're having some communication problems with the satellite. Not our problem, it's the satellite just is not quite getting the pictures to us in a timely manner, but soon we are going to hopefully have this updated for you. But again, with it about 5 to 6 hours old, we're looking at the actual location of Mitch a little bit farther to the west. This is the Yucatan Peninsula, Belize right here. As this moves off to the west, we could see a piling of the water, heavy rainfall, and also very strong wind. Coastline of Honduras and Belize. Here's the exact location from the hurricane hunters this morning with maximum sustained winds at 180 miles an hour with the movement to the west at 8 miles an hour. And that general motion is expected to continue over the next 24 hours. So we do have hurricane warnings in effect for the coastal areas of Honduras, Guatemala, Belize, and also here for Mexico. And we have tropical storm advisories, warnings remaining in effect for the Cayman Islands right here. As Hurricane Mitch passed close to those areas, we saw some gusty winds.
Oh, this is probably what they're showing here. This is probably the only footage I think I've ever found of Mitch affecting the Grand Cayman Islands.
Though you're on the fringes of the hurricane, you definitely were feeling the effect. Kicking up the waves and creating flooding on the island. Many roads were impassable. Some of you folks tried to make it through. Some had a lot of problems. Fortunately, though, no reports of any serious injuries.
Okay, I mistaken this. I think this. I mistake. This is actually the last one. I'm sorry.
Good morning, everyone. Time now for your tropical update, and we're still dealing with a very formidable hurricane down here in the Caribbean Sea. This is Hurricane Mitch, not quite so powerful as it was. It's still a Category 5, 165 miles an hour, and that is a massive hurricane. It's down, though. The top winds are down from 180 to 165 miles an hour. I should explain that you won't quite see the same pictures here that we had earlier in the past because we don't have our GOES 8 satellite. We've had to go to GOES 10. We don't see the Caribbean quite as well on that because the satellite is parked well to the west. But still, we see an eye that is extremely well formed. And let's go now to the particulars centered at 17.3 and 85.0. That's 210 miles east of Belize City in the Belize, and the winds 165 miles an hour, moving toward the west at 6 miles an hour, and the estimated pressure now is 917 millibars. Now, it's been about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning since we had a reconnaissance plane out there. We are going to have another one out there, though, in about an hour or a little better, and we'll be able to see at that time just exactly how powerful this hurricane is now. If you don't have the recon, you can't be quite sure, although you can make a very good estimate from the satellite pictures. Nevertheless, hurricane warnings are up along the entire coast of Honduras. They're up for the country of Belize and the Yucatan Peninsula up as far as Cabo Catoche up at the tip of the Yucatan Peninsula. Those are hurricane warnings. And of course, a hurricane warning means that you need to do whatever needs to be done right away. We still have out tropical storm warnings for the Cayman Islands, although I would emphasize that no hurricane or no tropical storm force winds are being reported there. Also, there have extremely high surf all along all these areas, along Honduras, along Guatemala, along Belize, along Yucatan, and the Cayman Islands, because that surf has already been generated by this strong Category 5 hurricane. Now, the hurricane force winds extending out about 60 miles, tropical storm force winds about 170 or 175, and they are impinging on Honduras. And we've seen gusts now to tropical storm force all the way up to Cancun and Cozumel. Here's the latest satellite picture, still very well organized, maybe not quite as symmetric as it was 24 hours ago. So we're watching with some anxiety to see what the next recon will tell us. As far as the United States is concerned, maybe eventually we'd have to worry about it, but certainly not right away. Not going any place very fast. It's going to be down here in the Caribbean or over the Yucatan for quite some time to come. And if it turns north, we have plenty of time to deal with that.
Okay, I think this is okay. Again, it's been a while since I really researched I really checked
Thanks for
on
joining
all
us
of them.
here on the Weather Channel for Storm Watch on a day which has turned pretty stormy across portions of extreme southern
So this is kind
Mexico.
of like when it
Eddy
starts
County
weakening.
is continuing under a tornado warning at this time. We'll tell you more about that and check weather elsewhere across the country. But first, the very latest on Hurricane Mitch. Here's our tropical update with Dr. Steve Lyons.
Well, thank you, Dan, and welcome to the Tropical Update this evening. Let's fill you in on the latest on Hurricane Mitch out here in the northern and western Caribbean Sea. This is as of 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, position 16.8 north, 85.8 west. That's about 170 miles to the east of Belize City in Belize. Belize is the country that's sitting right in here, and so it's just about 170 miles to the east. It's moving west-southwest at 6 over the last 6 hours, and that's the current track. If you look at it on the satellite image in just a minute, we'll detail why it's moving that way and what's going to happen here in just a second. Pressure's come up a little bit, which is good news. Winds are still extremely strong, nearly Category 5, but a little bit weaker than it had been, which is good news. But still, don't let your guard down here. This is a very intense and dangerous hurricane. Hurricane warnings up for the entire coast of all the way up from Cabo Catoche, all the way down along the Honduras coast to the Honduran border. Those are hurricane warnings. That means hurricane winds within the next 24 hours are likely. And in some cases, it's much more likely sooner than that. As a matter of fact, an island right over here, we just saw a report of 60 knots sustained. That's about 70 miles per hour. So almost hurricane force on one of the little islands right here on the northern coast of Honduras right now. So this whole area, you need to be prepared for the worst here over the next several hours and days, as the case may be here. Tropical storm watches remain in effect for the Cayman Islands, but they're pretty much out of the works of the wind because the winds are relatively small in radii here. But we could get some gusts of tropical storm force over the Caymans. But imagine that'll be taken down here probably later this evening. On our satellite imagery here, first of all, let's look here over the Gulf of Mexico. We see nothing except a huge plume of cirrus blowing off just south of Miami, down over the Keys here in association with Mitch down here. And you can see the eye there. Let's zoom in here a little bit closer and take a closer look at it. Here's our colorized infrared imagery, and you can see the eye is moving to the southwest. And even though it doesn't look all that well defined, remember, we're looking from a satellite that's well off to the west, our GOES 10 satellite. So it gives the appearance of a colder eye than what is really there. So still a very intense hurricane. You can see the structures come down here along the coast of Honduras, and they're experiencing very heavy rain there. Now, what's going to happen the next 24 hours? First of all, heavy rain, especially over the coastal and mountain areas of Honduras and into the Belize area, and you can see some bands of rain affecting all the way up into the Yucatan now, although winds will not be that strong up there for a while. Second, very, very heavy surf. Wave heights on the order of 25 to 30 feet in the open ocean will break along some of the coastline here on the order of 25 to 35 feet. That will cause a water level rise of about 4 to 6 feet along the coastline, irregardless of which way the hurricane goes or even though it stays offshore. And the highest breaking waves will be along the Yucatan Peninsula here along the Belize coast. Now, the storm surge, if it were to come closer to the coast as it is now, will be highest along the Honduras coast, especially in this little niche in here as time goes on, and that could be on the order of 5 to 8 feet, assuming we have landfall there. The official Hurricane Center forecast track takes it here and then up and landfalls it somewhere in northern Belize. But let's keep in mind here that there's a couple of interesting things. First of all, the wind radii is relatively small here. Now, there are two things that are keeping this thing moving relatively slowly. The westward drift is from the low levels. It's pushing it to the west very slowly, but now we're starting to get some upper level westerlies to the west of it that are causing the mid and upper level steering to basically be to the east or almost stationary. So we don't expect it to move very fast. It's going to be a very, very slow meander. And because of that, very, very heavy rain, and water is what kills people in hurricanes. Rain, heavy surf, is going to be a very dangerous situation over the next 24 to 36 hours along the coast here.
Okay, that's going to be officially it of the. That was actually probably the biggest one, but I think we're pretty much just about done with the clips for a while. I know we are kind of running a little bit over time, so what I'm just going to do quickly is I got two slides that I'll read quickly, and then we'll end it right afterwards. But before we do so, quite a history it was showing, wasn't it, Wayne?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, it was showing its tracking right from day one.
Yeah.
So I mean, they were pretty hot on keeping everybody informed on it,
Right.
on which direction it was heading to, the power of it. That automatically is going to tell people whether they need to be getting out of the way or not. You know, it's gone from a category 4 into a category 5. That's alarm bells ringing. See you later. I'm off, sort of thing. I mean, I also had noticed in a lot of the clips there that there is a big reason as to why it was going so slow and didn't push up as far as it did. And that was because if you look to the northwest, there was another weather front heading to the southeast. And that was pushing into the Gulf of Mexico.
That's right.
So that would have helped to slow Hurricane Mitch down into the Gulf of Mexico. That's probably the main reason why it slowed right down to about 8 miles per hour, because of the other weather front in front of it was still pushing into it. So it was counteracting what Hurricane Mitch was doing. Had that weather front not have been there, Hurricane Mitch would have probably been able to have gone straight into the Gulf of Mexico at the same speed it started at, and would have then increased in the speed of the rotation would have carried on increasing for a bit. So it would have been a ferocious hurricane by the time it hit landfall within the Gulf of Mexico.
Absolutely, because most hurricanes and typhoons usually move around 10 to 15 miles per hour, or sometimes 20 miles per hour. That's usually the average speed of most of them. But yeah, the fact this one was really slowed down. I mean, it's certainly one of the slowest on record.
Yeah, and you can tell with that weather front to the northwest, that then would have dictated which direction Hurricane Mitch would then travel to, which we know it literally sort of veered off to the right and headed back across the Atlantic towards the UK. So that weather front there was probably pivotal in saving so many lives and so much damage.
Yeah. Well, that's like I said, after going through a lot of these clips, we're going to actually see like the actual. I mean, maybe again, we might have to make a part 3 out of this, but we actually, I know, but we actually this time may be able to like see the inside view of what was really going on in those countries when they were affected by Mitch. Before this, we were just looking from the Weather Channel perspective. Eventually, now we're going to start getting into, what was actually going on, in throughout Central America, particularly Honduras and Nicaragua. So what I'm just going to read 2 slides and then we'll end it here for now, at least to give some of the ideas of how the impact was when Hurricane Mitch originally hit Jamaica, Cuba, and the Cayman Islands. So on the south coast of Cuba, the hurricane caused waves of up to 13 feet high and wind gusts peaking at 42 miles per hour, causing numerous tourists and workers on the Isle of Youth and Cayo Largo Day. So that was the impact it had there. In Jamaica, where officials declared hurricane warnings 12 hours prior to its closest approach, Mitch caused moderate rainfall and gusty winds for days. Strong winds hit western Jamaica with wave heights unofficially estimated at nearly 7 feet in height. The rainfall and outer rain bands, at times severe, flooded many roads across the island and left them covered with debris. One house in Spanish Town collapsed from the flooding, leaving 4 homeless. Many other homes and buildings were flooded, forcing many to evacuate. A river in northeastern Jamaica overflowed its banks, while heavy rainfall across the mountainous parts of the country caused numerous mudslides. In all, Mitch killed 3 people in Jamaica. You could very well say this was basically when the storm did claim its first 3 lives. Now, on the Cayman Islands, the hurricane caused strong waves, gusty winds, and heavy rainfall at times. Damage was relatively minimal, amounting to blown out windows and beach erosion. Strong waves damaged or destroyed many docks on the south shore of the islands and also sank one dive ship near Grand Cayman. In addition, numerous incoming and outgoing flights were canceled. So you could very well imagine from these satellite images. The last one I'm going to read, and this is actually kind of in response to what Cliff had said not too long ago, because he mentioned about he was thinking about the ships and boats out there.
Yeah,
we're going to save this other part for another time, but I'll at least give a little introduction. Mitch was also one of the most notorious stories of Mitch. Mitch was also responsible for the loss with all hands of Windjammer Barefoot Cruises schooner Phantom. The story was recorded in the book The Ship in the Storm by Jim Carrier. October 24th, the Phantom, a 70-year-old sailboat owned by Miami-based Windjammer Barefoot Cruises, sets off from the small port of Amoa, Honduras, for a planned 6-day cruise in the Caribbean Sea. On board are 97 passengers and 41 crew, most of them West Indians, with 32-year-old Captain Guyan March at the helm. Captain March is Windjammer's golden boy, the youngest captain in its fleet of 8 sailboats. Just to give a quick little description of exactly what the Phantom was, actually, I'll extend it just a little bit more. Oops, sorry, that was my fault. The Phantom, interestingly, was really one of the last boats built in the great age of sail, and it was patterned after the great schooners. It was long as a football field, 300 feet. It had 4 masts, each of them about 12 stories high. The thing is that it actually was not a good sailing machine, but it was a grand boat and was used in the Caribbean for many years, and people loved to sail on it. There actually is more, but we'll stop right here and we'll get to the story about the Windjammer Cruise Line for the next episode. So I know I haven't been able to really respond to everybody. So let me go back real quick on the comments. Who do we see what we got here? Yeah, there's Lois saying, sorry for the background noise. That is good sound effects. Poor Mr. Muley Senior. He's trying to clean up the weed. I know. You were on page 22 of the book I sent you. I'm not that much of a. Yeah, Cliff. I think he already got the answer. It was from 1998. Let's say it was a good honeymoon. Space shuttle reentry and Mitch all in 1 week. Oh, check it out. Sarah put out some information about Hurricane Mitch, about the later part of it, of its life. So, but we'll get to. I got more details on it, so we'll get to that. In the later part of the slideshow. I use a site that gives you live updates around the world, i.e., weather, volcanoes, wars, virus outbreaks, etc. You can zoom in on the map and click for the source. Well, that's interesting. Oh, Kate just showed up. What's up? Oh, well, actually, it was about 20 minutes ago. What's up, Kate? I'm not sure if you're still on, but always awesome seeing you here. You're not a Scot, but happy St. Andrew's Day today. Okay. All righty. Well, I think, like I said, I think we're going to have to end it for now. But like I said, from this point on the slideshow, there are going to be more videos, but nowhere as long as these ones were. So we'll actually get, I know. This time, like I said, we're going to actually look at actual footage of Hurricane Mitch and the impact it had on Honduras. And, it's definitely going to, like I said before with Galveston, it's not really, it's kind of sad footage just seeing how completely destroyed these areas were. But it's always something to always kind of remind ourselves, just the power of nature, what it can do.
Anywhere. I mean,
yeah.
Back in, I think it was 1980 or 81, after my grandfather was killed, we all came over to Florida for a holiday, going to Disney, the Epcot Center and the Cape Canaveral and all that area. And I can remember, I think it was the Sheraton Hotel on Miami Beach, and we were staying there. And one night, apparently everybody was in a panic. All the lights kept going out and there was all sorts of chaos going on. And the following morning, I woke up, I looked out the window, and all the palm trees had gone off the beach.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I said to my mum, I said, what's happened outside? There's mess everywhere. You know, you could see palm tree leaves all over the road. There was sand everywhere, including up on the balconies of the hotels. And my mum turned around and she said, you're one lucky bugger. She said, you fell asleep and slept right through it. And I went, slept through what? She said, you and your cousin between you fell asleep. We had a cyclone hit.
Oh, my God.
And it went right along the beach. She said, and you've seen the palm trees missing, haven't you? I said, yes. She said, well, that ripped all of those up. Then everybody was out in the corridors of the hotel panicking because of all the wind and the lights going out and everything else. And the staff were running around telling everybody to calm down, not to panic. She said, you and your cousin were fast asleep.
Jeez.
And I managed to sleep through it all.
I don't know how anyone could sleep through something like that.
I slept through the hurricane in the UK back in 1987.
Wow.
Well, we were told there wasn't going to be a hurricane, but it hit us anyway, and we woke up the following morning.
Still hit you guys.
People had lost their roofs and sheds. Trees got blown over and all sorts. So it's I must have been a heavy sleeper.
That's quite a story. I got to be honest with you. So I've never heard of anyone ever sleeping in through one before.
I mean, it is quite a shock when you can go to bed and everything's normal. You know, you can hear cars going backwards and forwards. You hear people walking out and about, fire engines, police cars, you name it. It's the normal routine of things. But something like a cyclone passing through is going to cause chaos. The level of noise is going to increase somewhat. And like you say, how we could sleep through it is beyond me. But, you know, there was people screaming and shouting in the corridors. Everybody was panicking. They're running backwards and forwards, slamming doors. Me and my cousin still asleep. Bearing in mind, at the time, I was only about 6 or 7 years old.
Right.
But, you know, we were told we couldn't go down onto the beach because of all the debris that had to be cleared up. So they had all the tractors going out with the big rakes going along the beach to clear up all of the mess that was on the beach. Lorries were coming along, picking up all the trees and stuff off the roads. The cleaning staff was coming around all the hotels, sweeping all the sand off the balconies and sweeping it onto the balcony below, which made no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah.
But you actually see, when you see the devastation for first hand, just from something as quick as the cyclone, you know, it literally came in and went overnight. But the damage that it created was enough to make you stand back and think, wow, that was powerful.
Yeah. I believe it.
You don't, you know, when you watch things like this, for instance, or the weather reports, and you actually see firsthand what the damage is being caused, it actually makes you step back and realize how fragile we all are.
That's absolutely true.
That Mother Nature can take us away just like that at a moment's notice, and there's nothing we can do to stop it.
Exactly. She's in control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's where I actually decided to just kind of jump ahead on the slideshows. So, like I said, now we got most of these videos out of the way. You're going to really see a lot of detail. And again, this is where things start getting a lot more sadder, because you're going to see like a lot of details. Again, people's lives being torn apart by this deadly hurricane. I mean, it could just be wiped out literally within a matter of minutes. And Hurricane Mitch truly was a hurricane that was no exception.
Yeah.
So, anyways, as much as I would like to continue, we do have to get off here because it's been almost 2 hours.
We've got great
how fast.
We've beaten our record.
Well, you know, like sometimes it's always good to sometimes, you know, even though it was mostly watching the Weather Channel clips, it's always sometimes nice to have one show every once in a while where we don't have to rely on talking so much. It's always just nice sometimes to watch something else. But in this case, it was to represent something important. So, giving almost like all the details I can about this storm.
Yeah, well, you've got to. I mean, it's okay saying, "Oh, well, we're going to talk about Hurricane Mitch," and it was a hurricane. It came in towards the Gulf of Mexico, went out via Florida, head over to the UK. You could do that all day long, and it would only be one episode, and it would be over.
Yeah.
But when you go into more detail about how it started or where it started, the fact that it built up speed, then it slowed down. It was almost like it was intelligent. It knew exactly what it was doing, where it was going. And then you talk about the everyday lives that were affected by it.
Yeah, definitely.
It breaks it down into a more realistic story, and the reality of it makes it all a lot more clearer and easier to understand. We could very easily go throughout our lives going, oh yeah, hurricane this, hurricane that, storm this, storm that, and not worry about it. But then when you look at the everyday lives that get affected by it, and you take in how their lives were either spared or lost because of a hurricane, it makes it a different story.
It really does. It really does. Because then you're actually giving detail. You're giving the account of what really happened in this area, the people that were affected, people's homes, almost everything. So sometimes going into the much slower, longer detail is way better, because then you're giving everyone a much better understanding of, the true impact and what really happened during that time.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, like I said, I think we'll have to end this because I got to get back on here in less than 2 hours. Well, in 2 hours for Supernatural talk. So
I've got to help. I've got to help my sweet Ellen get some decorations up for my daughter's birthday in the morning.
Oh, is that right? Well, happy birthday to her. I'll say that now. So, but I actually got to get decorations up later tonight because I'm getting my Thanksgiving stuff down, then getting the Christmas stuff up. So I got my own decorations I got to get up.
Our Christmas decorations are up already.
See, we waited because everyone puts them out sometimes, like right after Halloween. We're being more patient, though. On the other hand, we have actual Thanksgiving decorations.
Yeah. Well, normally we put our Christmas decorations out on Tamsin's birthday, but we decided that this year we were gonna.
That's funny.
We were actually going to get the decorations out before her birthday, and so as soon as the Halloween decorations came down, we were like, right, let's start organising what we're going to put up for Christmas. But last Friday they eventually all went up, so we're trying.
Yeah, well, tonight's going to be the night. Tonight's going to be my night instead. So it's too bad Lois also had to leave early. So I mean, I know she said she had something personal come up, so hopefully she's doing okay. But I know I said originally I was going to go on break from doing the Frighteners, but I might have to come on tomorrow because we got Chrissy Walker from Entering the Unknown Paranormal, who I actually haven't spoken to in almost in face to face in almost 3 years. So it'll be good chatting with her again. So I'm willing to make this the real last time I'll show up on Frighteners. I promise you that. But with that being said, I mean, Wayne, unless you had anything else you want to bring up before we go, or
no, I can't think of anything apart from maybe keep your eyes open Saturday night. There may be the odd live feed come from the Simply Spooky Christmas investigation at Church Farm Skegness.
Awesome.
And there are still tickets left if anybody's interested.
Now, and you said this is going to be okay, so it is going to be broadcasted live on Simply Spooky, then, correct?
It may be. It depends. There might either be a little live feed. It'll either be on the Simply Spooky group, or it may even be on the Dark Mirror radio show group.
Oh, that's awesome.
Me or Mark will certainly try and see if we can do a little live feed. Maybe while we're all in there eating fish and chips. Who knows?
Well, either way, I mean, I'll definitely keep an eye and keep a lookout for it, because definitely would like to check it out for myself.
Brilliant.
So yeah, keep us updated for it.
Yeah, will do.
All right. Well, until then, we'll see you guys. Well, I'll be back on in 2 hours, so I'm sure I'll see you guys some of you guys then. And I guess we'll see everyone else probably tomorrow for the Frighteners. So until then, you guys all have a great night. Take care.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.